My husband called me a disgrace in front of his wealthy friends and abandoned me at a restaurant on my birthday, leaving me to cover the dinner for 17 people. As he stormed off, he shouted, "A woman like you should be grateful I even looked your way." I grinned quietly and waited. This morning, my phone erupted with 23 missed calls. "A woman like you should be grateful I even looked your way." Travis delivered these words with perfect clarity across our dinner table at Chateau Blanc, his voice cutting to the restaurant's elegant ambience as 17 of his business associates watched in silence. The champagne flute in his hand remained steady. Not a drop spilled as he stood to leave me with the $3,847 bill. This was my 35th birthday dinner. 2 hours earlier, I'd been applying my grandmother's lipstick in our bedroom mirror, telling myself that tonight would be different, that maybe Travis would remember who I was before the money, before his partnership at the firm, before I became an embarrassment to parade in front of his wealthy friends. But I should start at the beginning of that day when the morning still held promise, and I hadn't yet understood how completely Travis had orchestrated my humiliation. I woke at 5:30 a.m. as I had every morning for the past 2 years since Travis made partner. The alarm never woke him anymore. He trained himself to sleep through it, knowing I would slip out of bed to begin the ritual that our marriage had become. First, the Italian espresso machine that cost more than most people's rent. 14 seconds to grind the beans, not 13, not 15. Water heated to exactly 200 degrees. The Venetian Ditas cups his mother had given us as a wedding present, warmed with hot water before pouring. Our kitchen was a monument to everything Travis believed mattered. Marble countertops from a quarry in Carrara that he'd mentioned casually at dinner parties. A Sub-Zero refrigerator that could connect his phone, though he'd never bothered learning how. The 8-burner Viking range that I used to make his single cup of coffee each morning, because Travis insisted fresh beans should be ground for each serving. I moved through this space I could never quite think of as mine, remembering the galley kitchen in our first apartment where we danced while waiting for pasta water to boil. Back then, Travis would wrap his arms around me from behind while I stirred sauce, telling me about his day at the firm when he was still an associate with dreams instead of a partner with demands. Now, he took his espresso standing by the floor-toe-ceiling windows, reviewing market reports on his phone, while I existed somewhere in his peripheral vision. "Remember we have the Washingtons tonight," he said that morning, my birthday morning, without looking up. "Wear the black Armani and do something about your hair." The Washingtons. I'd forgotten about them entirely, lost in the foolish hope that my birthday might warrant a dinner with just the two of us. But Travis had been courting their portfolio for months, and apparently my birthday provided the perfect opportunity for another business dinner disguised as a social occasion. By 7:15 a.m., I was pulling into the parking lot at Lincoln Elementary, trading marble and espresso machines for construction paper and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber but was made by people who smiled when they saw me. My third-grade classroom was a different universe entirely. 28 desks in various states of chaos, walls covered with times tables and drawings of families that sometimes included too many legs on the dog. This was where Savannah Turner still existed, even if the nameplate on my desk read, Mrs. Mitchell. Happy birthday, Mrs. Mitchell. Sophia launched herself at my legs the moment I entered the classroom, followed by a chorus of 8-year-old voices that had somehow discovered my secret. "How did you all know?" "We're detectives," announced Michael, proudly displaying the calendar where he'd circled today's date in red marker. "Plus, you told us last month when we were talking about birthdays, they'd made cards during their free reading time." Apparently, 28 pieces of construction paper with glitter that would haunt my classroom for weeks, covered misspelled declarations of love and drawings where I appeared to have either very long arms or very short legs, depending on the artist's perspective. This was wealth Travis would never understand, the kind that couldn't be deposited or leveraged or displayed at country club gatherings. During lunch, while my students played outside, I sat in the teacher's lounge with my colleague Janet, picking at a cafeteria salad that cost $3 and somehow tasted better than the $40 appetizers at Travis's favorite restaurants. "Baked birthday plans tonight?" Janet asked. "Dinner at Chateau Blanc." I tried to sound enthusiastic. "Fancy? Just the two of you? 17 people from Travis's firm?" Actually, The Washingtons are considering moving their portfolio. Janet's face did that careful thing teachers perfect when a child gives a wrong answer they deeply believe is right on your birthday. It's fine. Travis says birthdays are arbitrary constructs anyway. I repeated his words, tasting how hollow they sounded in the fluorescent light of the teacher's lounge. Honey, Janet said carefully, when's the last time Travis did something just for you? Not for networking, not for appearances, just because you wanted it. I couldn't answer because the truth was too pathetic to speak aloud. Every gesture, every gift, every dinner came with strings attached to his career advancement or social positioning. The tennis bracelet he'd given me last Christmas was because Marcus's wife had commented on my simple jewelry at the company gala. The weekend trip to the Hamptons was to attend a client's daughter's wedding. Even our anniversary dinner had included 2 potential investors who just happened to be at the same restaurant. After school, I stopped at home to change for dinner, choosing a dress Travis hadn't pre-approved. It was red knee-length, something I bought before we were married, when I still chose clothes based on how they made me feel rather than what message they sent about Travis's success. I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, applying my grandmother's lipstick, a shade of coral she'd worn every day of her adult life. For my brave girl, I whispered to my reflection, clasping her emerald earrings. They were small, probably worth less than the parking fee at Chateau Blanc. But they were real. She'd worn them through the Depression, through my grandfather's death, through the cancer that eventually took her. Wear these when you need strength, she told me. Tonight, surrounded by Travis's colleagues who would look through me while calculating my husband's net worth, I would need all the strength those tiny emeralds could provide. The drive home from school that day took me past the Riverside Country Club, its manicured hedges standing like green soldiers against the September sky. My membership card was in my wallet, a piece of plastic that granted access to a world where I'd never belong, no matter how many times Travis insisted I attend the monthly spouse luncheons. The next one was tomorrow, and my stomach tightened at the thought. The luncheon arrived with unseasonable heat that made my department store dress cling uncomfortably as I walked to the club's oak doors. The main dining room had been arranged with round tables covered in cream linens, each centerpiece a careful arrangement of white roses that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. Patricia Rothschild stood near the bar, Hermes' bag catching the light as she gestured to Jennifer Cross, both of them laughing at something on Jennifer's phone. I chose a seat at their table because Travis had specifically instructed me to cultivate these relationships. Patricia's husband controlled a hedge fund that Travis desperately wanted to manage, and Jennifer's family connections could open doors throughout the Northeast Corridor. As I approached, their conversation stopped abruptly, smiles appearing like masks sliding into place. "Savannah, how lovely," Patricia said, ere kissing somewhere near my left ear. "That dress is so cheerful. Target Nordstrom rack." Actually, I kept my voice light, refusing to apologize. How practical. I wish I could pull off that kind of shopping. Her tone suggested she'd rather wear burlap than set foot in a discount store. The waiter arrived with wine selections, and Patricia ordered a bottle of Sis that I knew cost $300 because Travis had ordered it last week to impress clients. As the burgundy liquid filled our glasses, Patricia's hand somehow slipped, sending a cascade of red wine directly onto my lap. The gas she produced deserved an Academy Award. "Oh no, your sweet little dress." She pressed napkins against the spreading stain with enough force to ensure the wine penetrated every fiber. "This is entirely my fault. Jennifer, don't you have something in your car?" Jennifer's eyes lit up with false concern. "I do have my gym clothes. They're designer athletic wear, but they might work in a pinch." I stood there, wine dripping onto the pristine marble floor, while every woman in the room turned to watch, some with sympathy, most with the kind of satisfied look that comes from witnessing someone else's humiliation. Patricia continued her performance, calling for club soda and more napkins, ensuring maximum attention to my ruined dress. In the bathroom, I tried to salvage what I could with paper towels and hand soap, but the stain had set into a purple map across my stomach and thighs. Through the door, I heard Patricia's voice carrying from a hallway. "Poor thing. Travis really did marry his charity case, didn't he? You can dress them up, but breeding always shows. She tries so hard. Jennifer added with mock sympathy. Last month, she actually suggested we should do a fundraiser for public school teachers. As if that's what our philanthropy committee is for. Travis must be mortified. Imagine having to bring her to firm events. I stayed in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes, sitting fully clothed on the toilet seat, staring at the wine stain that looked like blood in the fluorescent light. When I finally emerged, the luncheon had moved on to the salad course. I made my excuses about a teaching emergency and left, driving home in a dress that reeked of alcohol and shame. That evening, Travis barely looked up when I told him about the incident. Patricia can be clumsy, he said, returning to his laptop. Maybe we're something less prone to staining next time. For months before my birthday, everything shifted, though I didn't recognize it at the time. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I'd come home early with a migraine that had started during fourth period. Travis's car was in the garage, which made sense because he told me he was flying to Boston for a client meeting. I was carrying his suits to our bedroom closet when the receipt fell from his jacket pocket, fluttering to the floor like an autumn leaf. La Bernardine. The date was yesterday when he was supposedly in Boston. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m., around when he texted me about being exhausted from client presentations. The bill was for 2 people, oysters, champagne. The chocolate soul he always said was too rich for his taste. My hands trembled as I examined his collar, finding a lipstick marked the color of fresh plums. Nothing like my coral shade or the nude tones I sometimes wore. It was deliberate, that mark placed where any wife doing laundry would find it. The perfume clinging to the fabric wasn't mine either. Something musky and expensive that made my stomach turn. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a folder I labeled tax documents in case Travis ever went through my photos. Then I carefully returned the receipt to his pocket, hung the suit exactly as I had found it, and spent the next hour vomiting in the guest bathroom, my body rejecting the truth my mind couldn't yet process. When Travis came home that night, he kissed my forehead and asked about my day, his lying mouth forming words about delayed flights and difficult clients, while I smiled and served the dinner I'd made. He even complimented the chicken, saying it was perfectly seasoned, unaware that I'd been too nauseous to taste anything. 2 weeks after finding the receipt, insomnia had become my companion. I'd lie beside Travis, listening to his steady breathing while my mind raced through possibilities and explanations. One night at 2 a.m., I crept to his home office and opened the filing cabinet where he kept our important documents. The prenuptial agreement was in a folder marked insurance, 18 pages of legal language I'd signed the morning of our wedding, because Travis said it was just a formality that protected both of us. Reading it by the light of my phone, I discovered clauses I'd never noticed in my wedding day. Hayes! Most of it protected Travis's assets, ensuring I'd leave the marriage with little more than I brought to it. But on page 12, buried in subsection 7b, was something called a moral turpitude clause. Any party found guilty of financial crimes, adultery that could be documented, or actions that brought public disgrace to the marriage would forfeit all protections under the agreement. Travis's lawyer had glossed over this section, calling it standard language that never applies to people like us. Wear these when you need strength, she told me. Tonight, surrounded by Travis's colleagues who would look through me while calculating my husband's net worth, I would need all the strength those tiny emeralds could provide. The drive home from school that day took me past the Riverside Country Club, its manicured hedges standing like green soldiers against the September sky. My membership card was in my wallet, a piece of plastic that granted access to a world where I'd never belong, no matter how many times Travis insisted I attend the monthly spouse luncheons. The next one was tomorrow, and my stomach tightened at the thought. The luncheon arrived with unseasonable heat that made my department store dress cling uncomfortably as I walked to the club's oak doors. The main dining room had been arranged with round tables covered in cream linens, each centerpiece a careful arrangement of white roses that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. Patricia Rothschild stood near the bar, Hermes' bag catching the light as she gestured to Jennifer Cross, both of them laughing at something on Jennifer's phone. I chose a seat at their table because Travis had specifically instructed me to cultivate these relationships. Patricia's husband controlled a hedge fund that Travis desperately wanted to manage, and Jennifer's family connections could open doors throughout the Northeast Corridor. As I approached, their conversation stopped abruptly, smiles appearing like masks sliding into place. "Savannah, how lovely," Patricia said, air kissing somewhere near my left ear. "That dress is so cheerful. Target Nordstrom rack." Actually, I kept my voice light, refusing to apologize. How practical. I wish I could pull off that kind of shopping. Her tone suggested she'd rather wear burlap than set foot in a discount store. The waiter arrived with wine selections, and Patricia ordered a bottle of Sis that I knew cost $300 because Travis had ordered it last week to impress clients. As the burgundy liquid filled our glasses, Patricia's hand somehow slipped, sending a cascade of red wine directly onto my lap. The gasp she produced deserved an Academy Award. "Oh no, your sweet little dress." She pressed napkins against the spreading stain with enough force to ensure the wine penetrated every fiber. "This is entirely my fault. Jennifer, don't you have something in your car?" Jennifer's eyes lit up with false concern. "I do have my gym clothes. They're designer athletic wear, but they might work in a pinch." I stood there, wine dripping onto the pristine marble floor, while every woman in the room turned to watch, some with sympathy, most with the kind of satisfied look that comes from witnessing someone else's humiliation. Patricia continued her performance, calling for club soda and more napkins, ensuring maximum attention to my ruined dress. In the bathroom, I tried to salvage what I could with paper towels and hand soap, but the stain had set into a purple map across my stomach and thighs. Through the door, I heard Patricia's voice carrying from a hallway. "Poor thing. Travis really did marry his charity case, didn't he? You can dress them up, but breeding always shows." "She tries so hard," Jennifer added with mock sympathy. "Last month, she actually suggested we should do a fundraiser for public school teachers. As if that's what our philanthropy committee is for. Travis must be mortified. Imagine having to bring her to firm events." I stayed in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes, sitting fully clothed on the toilet seat, staring at the wine stain that looked like blood in the fluorescent light. When I finally emerged, the luncheon had moved on to the salad course. I made my excuses about a teaching emergency and left, driving home in a dress that reeked of alcohol and shame. That evening, Travis barely looked up when I told him about the incident. "Patricia can be clumsy," he said, returning to his laptop. "Maybe wear something less prone to staining next time." For months before my birthday, everything shifted, though I didn't recognize it at the time. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I'd come home early with a migraine that had started during fourth period. Travis's car was in the garage, which made sense because he told me he was flying to Boston for a client meeting. I was carrying his suits to our bedroom closet when the receipt fell from his jacket pocket, fluttering to the floor like an autumn leaf. La Bernardine. The date was yesterday when he was supposedly in Boston. The timestamp showed 8:47 p.m., around when he texted me about being exhausted from client presentations. The bill was for 2 people, oysters, champagne. The chocolate soul he always said was too rich for his taste. My hands trembled as I examined his collar, finding a lipstick marked the color of fresh plums. Nothing like my coral shade or the nude tones I sometimes wore. It was deliberate, that mark placed where any wife doing laundry would find it. The perfume clinging to the fabric wasn't mine either. Something musky and expensive that made my stomach turn. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a folder I labeled tax documents in case Travis ever went through my photos. Then I carefully returned the receipt to his pocket, hung the suit exactly as I'd found it, and spent the next hour vomiting in the guest bathroom, my body rejecting the truth my mind couldn't yet process. When Travis came home that night, he kissed my forehead and asked about my day, his lying mouth forming words about delayed flights and difficult clients, while I smiled and served the dinner I'd made. He even complimented the chicken, saying it was perfectly seasoned, unaware that I'd been too nauseous to taste anything. 2 weeks after finding the receipt, insomnia had become my companion. I'd lie beside Travis, listening to his steady breathing while my mind raced through possibilities and explanations. One night at 2 a.m., I crept to his home office and opened the filing cabinet where he kept our important documents. The prenuptial agreement was in a folder marked insurance, 18 pages of legal language I'd signed the morning of our wedding because Travis said it was just a formality that protected both of us. Reading it by the light of my phone, I discovered clauses I'd never noticed in my wedding day. Hayes! Most of it protected Travis's assets, ensuring I'd leave the marriage with little more than I brought to it. But on page 12, buried in subsection 7b, was something called a moral turpitude clause. Any party found guilty of financial crimes, adultery that could be documented, or actions that brought public disgrace to the marriage would forfeit all protections under the agreement. Travis's lawyer had glossed over this section, calling it standard language that never applies to people like us. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood at the sink, splashing cold water on my face while my reflection stared back with eyes that finally understood. My marriage wasn't failing. It had never existed. I was a prop in Travis's performance of success, a supporting character whose role was to be grateful for the part. When I returned, Rachel had pulled up information about secure credit cards. You need something, and only your name. Your teacher's credit union can set you up with one based on your salary alone. Start small. Build your own credit history separate from his. Document everything. Every charge, every humiliation, every piece of evidence. My sister Emma won't be invited to my birthday dinner. I said suddenly. Travis says she doesn't fit the image we're cultivating. She's an emergency room nurse who saves lives every day. But apparently that's too working-ass for Chateau Blanc. Rachel's hand covered mine across the table. Then Emma is exactly who you need in your corner. The people Travis excludes are the ones who will help you survive this. 3 days before my birthday, I decided to test something. We were having dinner at home, a rare evening when Travis wasn't entertaining clients or at the club. I'd made coco vin, one of the few dishes he still complimented, and waited until he was on his second glass of wine. Marcus knew Portia is beautiful. I said casually, cutting my chicken with deliberate precision. The metallic blue one. He drove to the club yesterday. Travis's fork paused midway to his mouth. You were at the club yesterday. Teacher and service day. I had lunch with Patricia and Jennifer. The lie came easily flavored with just enough truth. They mentioned how successful Marcus has been lately. Marcus leases that car, Travis said, his voice tight. Real wealth doesn't need to advertise itself with flashy displays. Of course, I just thought it was pretty. I took a sip of water, then added, actually, I've been thinking about taking on some tutoring clients. Just a few hours a week for some extra spending money. The transformation was instant. Travis's face flushed from his collar to his hairline, the vein at his temple that appeared during partners' meetings suddenly visible. My wife does not need to take second jobs like some kind of hourly worker. What would people think that I can't provide for my own family? It was just a thought. I enjoy teaching, and some parents have asked. The answer is no. He set down his wine glass with enough force to make the liquid splash. This is exactly why I'm bringing in Vivian to help you. You don't understand how things work in my world. Our world. These small decisions you think don't matter. They reflect on me, on my ability to manage my own household. He stood, leaving his half-eaten dinner on the table. I've invited the right people to your birthday dinner. People who matter. People who can help us rise to where we belong. The least you can do is look and act the part without embarrassing me with talk of tutoring jobs like some desperate suburban housewife. The house felt suffocating after Travis stormed out, leaving his dinner cold on the table, and his words hanging in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning longer than I'd admitted. I stood at our bedroom mirror at 6:30, fastening my grandmother's emerald earrings with steady hands. Despite the churning in my stomach, the red dress I'd chosen looked defiant against my pale skin. Nothing like the black funeral shroud Travis had selected. My phone buzzed with his text. Running late. Meet you there. Of course, he was... Making an entrance was more important than arriving with his wife on her birthday. I called an Uber, not trusting my hands on the steering wheel, and watched the familiar streets blur past the window as we headed towards Chateau Blanc. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Special occasion. My birthday dinner. Happy birthday. Your husband must have something special planned. I managed a smile that felt like breaking glass. Something like that. Chateau Blanc rose from the street corner, like a monument to everything I'd never be. Valet attendants in better suits than anything in my closet opened doors for women who walked like they owned the air they breathed. The maitre Henry recognized me with a particular expression, reserved for people who didn't quite belong, but had to be tolerated. Mrs. Mitchell, your party has begun gathering. Right this way. The private dining room was already thick with laughter and the clink of cocktail glasses. Marcus Sterling stood at the center, his voice carrying over the others as he recounted some story about a client who tried to negotiate fees. Jennifer Cross perched on a velvet settee, her phone capturing everything for her 40,000 followers. Patricia Rothschild held court near the bar, diamonds catching the light like warnings. There she is, Marcus announced, his voice dripping with performative warmth. The birthday girl arrives. They all turned to look at me, 17 pairs of eyes, conducting the same evaluation. The red dress was wrong. The earrings were insignificant. The woman wearing them was a placeholder until Travis arrived with the real entertainment. Henri led me to my seat at the long table, not at the head where the guest of honor should sit, not beside the empty chair clearly reserved for Travis, but 3 seats down between Bradley Chen's date, a woman whose name no one bothered to tell me, and someone's assistant who spent the entire time responding to emails on his phone. Amber Lawson sat directly across from me, her smile sharp as she adjusted the neckline of her dress, a gesture so deliberate it might as well have been a declaration of war. She wore the perfume I'd smelled on Travis's jacket, something French that probably cost more than my car payment. Travis asked me to make sure everything was perfect for your special day. She said loud enough for everyone to hear. He's so thoughtful like that, always thinking of others. The first course arrived, oysters arranged on ice like small graves. Marcus raised his glass, already 3 martinis deep, judging by the slight sway in his stance. Before Travis gets here, let me say what we're all thinking. Savannah, you're living proof that Travis is the most charitable man we know. Laughter rippled through the room, sharp and bright as broken crystal. Patricia joined in, her voice cutting through the noise. Speaking of charity, Savannah, you really should let me add you to our philanthropic committee. We could use someone who understands how the other half lives. You know, for perspective, teachers are essentially glorified babysitters anyway. Marcus continued, gesturing with his glass. No offense, Savannah, but what is it you do exactly? Make sure kids don't eat paste. She teaches them their ABCs. William Rothschild chimed in. Valuable work. Someone has to do it. Travis could probably write her salary off as charitable giving. Patricia suggested, pretending to consider it seriously. Would that work, Bradley? You're the tax attorney. Bradley looked up from his phone long enough to smirk. Only if she qualifies as a dependent. Each comment landed like a small cut, precise and intentional. They'd done this before, maybe not to me specifically, but to someone. There was a rhythm to their cruelty, a practice coordination that suggested this was sport to them, and Travis's empty chair gave them permission to escalate. When he finally arrived 40 minutes late, smelling of whiskey and someone else's perfume, the table erupted in welcome. He didn't look at me, didn't apologize for being late to my birthday dinner, just launched into a story about the client meeting that had run over, the deal that would make them all rich. Sorry about the delay, he said to the table at large. You know how it is when real money is on the table. He took his seat at the head of the table, Amber immediately leaning in to whisper something that made him laugh. I sat there invisible on my own birthday, watching my husband flirt with his secretary, while his friends continued their performance. The main course arrived, steaks that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Travis finally looked at me, his eyes taking in the red dress with obvious displeasure. Interesting choice, Savannah. I thought we discussed appropriate attire. It's my birthday, I said quietly. I wanted to wear something that felt like me. That's the problem. He said loud enough for everyone to hear. You always want to be you instead of trying to be better. The silence that followed was complete. Even the wait staff seemed to pause, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Patricia tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in her throat. When Travis continued, Do you know how exhausting it is? Constantly having to explain why my wife shops at department stores, why she insists on working a job that pays less than our monthly wine budget, why she can't understand basic social dynamics. My hand found my grandmother's earrings, the stones cool against my fingertips. If I'm such an embarrassment, why did you marry me? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Travis's face darkened, the vein at his temple visible even in the soft lighting. He stood slowly, deliberately, his chair scraping against the marble floor. Because I thought I could fix you, polish you up, teach you how to belong. But class isn't something you can learn, is it? You're still the same small town nobody you were when I found you. The bill arrived then, leather folder landing in front of me like a verdict. Travis was already putting on his coat. This is what I get for trying to elevate someone beneath my station. He announced to the room, "Happy birthday, Savannah." A woman like, "You should be grateful. I even looked your way." He walked out, leaving me with 17 people who suddenly found their phones fascinating. The bill read $3,847.92. I pulled out the credit card I'd hidden from Travis, the one I'd been building for 6 months, and paid it without a word. Amber gathered her things quickly, muttering something about an early meeting as she practically ran after Travis. The others dispersed like roaches when lights turn on, leaving me alone with empty plates and the echo of humiliation. Henry's card was still in my coat pocket when I walked out of Chateau Blanc, the valet avoiding eye contact as he hailed me a cab. The November wind cut through my red dress, but I barely felt it. My mind was already working, processing what had just happened, not as a wound, but as evidence. The 43 blocks home gave me time to think, each streetlight passing like a marker on the path towards something I couldn't quite name yet. When I reached our building, Travis's Audi was already in the garage, parked at an angle that suggested he'd been drinking more after leaving the restaurant. I found him in his study, passed out in his leather chair, with a half-empty bottle of Macallan on the desk. His phone lay beside him. Screen up, notifications from Amber, lighting it up every few seconds. I texted Rachel from the bathroom. "He's unconscious. Can you come now?" 20 minutes later, she slipped through our front door like a shadow, carrying a laptop bag and wearing dark clothes that made her look like a very organized burglar. She took one look at Travis snoring in his chair and nodded toward his computer. "How long will he be out?" Based on the bottle, at least 3 hours, maybe more. She sat at his desk, fingers flying across his keyboard with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. Most people use the same passwords for everything. Let me guess, his birthday, anniversary. No, wait. Men like Travis use dates that matter to them. The day he made partner. I watched the login screen, except her third attempt. How did you know? Because narcissists are predictable. They choose passwords that celebrate themselves. The screen filled with folders organized with the same precision Travis brought to everything except his marriage. Rachel clicked through them methodically, her expression growing darker with each discovery. She plugged in a USB drive, copying files while I kept watch at the door. "Look at this," she whispered, turning the screen toward me. An email thread with someone named Christine, dated 3 months ago. Travis had written, "Savannah still thinks I'm at client dinners. The woman would believe anything if he said it with enough authority. Last night, she actually ironed my shirt for my meeting with you." My stomach turned, but Rachel was already moving to another folder. Exit strategy labeled with last month's date. Inside were spreadsheets showing money movements, transfers to accounts in the Caymans, property evaluations for assets I didn't know we owned, a draft email to a divorce attorney outlining his plan to claim I was mentally unstable, that my paranoid delusions about affairs made me an unfit spouse. "He's been planning this for months," Rachel said, copying everything. "But look here," he's sloppy. "These transfers, they're from client accounts. He's moving their money through offshore accounts before bringing it back as investment returns. That's wire fraud." The next morning, I called the number Henri had discreetly written on his card. He answered on the first ring, his accent thicker over the phone. "Mrs. Mitchell, I hoped you would call. You said you had security footage, multiple angles, the dining room, the entrance, even audio from the table microphones we use for training purposes. What happened to you last night? In 30 years of service, I've never seen such cruelty. We met at a coffee shop near the restaurant. Henry arrived with a tablet, looking around nervously before sitting across from me. He pulled up the footage, and suddenly I was watching my humiliation from the outside. The image was crystal clear. Every word Travis said perfectly audible. I've seen him do this before, Henry said quietly, to business partners, to employees, but never to his own wife. There was a waiter, James, who spilled wine on Mr. Mitchell's jacket 2 years ago. Your husband had him fired, blacklisted from every restaurant in the city. James works construction now. Why are you helping me? Henry's eyes softened. Because someone should have helped you long ago. And because my daughter, he paused, choosing his words carefully. My daughter married a man like your husband. By the time she gathered the courage to leave, she had no evidence, no support. The court believed him, not her. He transferred the files to my phone, then handed me a written statement he'd already prepared detailing what he'd witnessed. If you need other witnesses, 3 of my servers have agreed to testify. They were appalled by what they saw. 2 days later, I sat across from Margaret Chin in a tiny cafe she'd chosen, one where no one from Travis's world would ever venture. She looked different from the last time I'd seen her at a firm event. Healthier, stronger, like she'd recovered from a long illness. Bradley destroyed me in our divorce, she said without preamble. But Travis was the architect. He coached Bradley on exactly what to say, which doctors to reference, how to make me look unstable. I have the emails to prove it. She slid a folder across the table, her hands perfectly steady. Travis billed Bradley for the consultation. $50,000 for destroying my life, itemized as legal services. But here's what they didn't know. I recorded Bradley practicing his testimony. Travis's voice is clear as day, telling him which words would trigger custody concerns. Why didn't you use this before? Because I was scared, broken. It took me 2 years of therapy to even look at this evidence again. But when I heard what he did to you on your birthday, I knew it was time. She met my eyes directly. Travis Mitchell has destroyed enough women. It ends with us. That evening, Rachel came over with her laptop and a box of documents. We spread everything across my dining room table, while Travis attended another poker night. The evidence was overwhelming when laid out together. Bank statements showing patterns of embezzlement, emails documenting affairs and asset hiding, Henry's footage of my public humiliation, Margaret's recordings of Travis coaching perjury. This is what I found in the client accounts. Rachel said, pulling up a spreadsheet. Mrs. Adelaide Morrison, age 83, has service fees of $500 monthly that don't appear on her statements. Mr. George Whitman, 78, has been charged for portfolio management on accounts that haven't been traded in years. Small amounts from 17 different elderly clients. How much total? $2.3 million over 5 years. He's been careful keeping each theft below reporting thresholds. But together, it's a pattern that screams elder financial abuse. I stare at the numbers, thinking of Mrs. Morrison, who'd sent us a Christmas card last year thanking Travis for managing her late husband's estate. She trusted him with everything she had, and he'd been stealing from her monthly, probably assuming she'd die before noticing. We have enough, Rachel said quietly. Financial crimes, adultery with documentation, emotional abuse on video, conspiracy to commit perjury. Any one of these would trigger the moral turpitude clause in your prenuptial agreement. Together, Travis won't just lose the divorce. He'll lose everything. I picked up my grandmother's earrings from where I'd set them on the table, their small emeralds catching the light. She'd survived the depression by selling eggs from her backyard chickens, raised 3 children alone after my grandfather died, and never once apologized for doing whatever it took to survive. Then we make sure he loses everything. I said, my voice steadier than I'd heard it in years. Every last thing, Rachel helped me organize the evidence into 4 separate packages that Sunday night, each one tailored for its specific recipient. We used latex gloves as if handling something toxic, which in a way we were. The financial crimes went to the SEC and IRS. The embezzlement from elderly clients went to the state attorney general. The fourth package I kept for someone else entirely. Monday evening, I called in sick for Tuesday, my first absence in 3 years. The principal didn't question it. My voice carried enough exhaustion to sell any illness. Travis barely noticed when I went to bed early, too busy with conference calls to Hong Kong to pay attention to his wife's schedule. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and placed my clothes in the guest bathroom, so I wouldn't wake him. The federal building opened at 8 a.m. sharp. I arrived at 7:45, watching government workers stream through security with their coffee cups and morning newspapers. The security guard, an older man with kind eyes, noticed my hands shaking as I placed my packages on the X-ray belt. "First time here?" he asked gently. "Yes, I need to file some reports." He looked at the addresses on my packages, SEC, IRS Attorney General, and his expression shifted to something like, "Understanding. There's a coffee cart on the second floor. You look like you could use something warm. The clerks at those offices are good people. They'll take care of you." I delivered each package personally, obtaining stamp receipts from abused clerks who probably saw whistleblowers every week. The IRS clerk, a woman with steel gray hair and reading glasses on a chain, actually patted my hand. "These cases take time," she said quietly, "but we do investigate every credible report." By 9:30 a.m., I was sitting in the lobby of the Marriott downtown, waiting for two women who didn't know they were about to have their world shifted. Lydia Morrison arrived first, her Chanel suit impeccable despite the early hour. Adelaide Whitman followed 5 minutes later, pearls at her throat and confusion in her eyes. "Savannah," Lydia said, "air kissing my cheek with practiced efficiency. Your message was rather cryptic. What's this about?" I'd chosen my words carefully when reaching out to them. Just enough urgency to ensure they'd come. Not enough detail to spark defensive loyalty to their husbands. Both women's spouses were Travis's biggest clients, and both men had been at my birthday dinner, laughing at his cruelty. "I need to show you something," I said, pulling out my tablet. "But first, I want you to know that what you do with this information is entirely your choice." I showed them the photos first. Travis with a red head at La Bernardine, his hand on her lower back. Travis entering the St. Regis with a blonde who definitely wasn't me. The receipts came next. Jewelry purchases that matched neither woman's collection hotel charges on dates when Travis was supposedly with their husbands. "Why are you showing us this?" Adelaide asked, though her face had already gone pale. "Because your husbands were there, they knew. Look at this credit card statement. A dinner for 4 at 11, Madison Park. Travis Marcus, your husband, George, and someone named Christine. The same night, George told you he was at that medical conference." Lydia grabbed the tablet. Zooming in on the statement, her breathing changed, became shallow and quick. Robert was supposed to be with him at that conference. They were sharing a room to save the company money. "There was no conference," I said gently. "I have the emails where they planned the cover story." Adelaide's hands shook as she reached for her phone. George's secretary. She always knows his real schedule. She dialed, speaking quickly, then hung up. Her face had shifted from confusion to rage. There was no medical conference. She says he was in the city all week. They cover for each other. I said, "It's a system. They've been doing it for years." Both women sat in silence for several minutes, processing what I'd shown them. Then Lydia straightened, her spine becoming steel. "Send me everything. Everything you have." "Me too," Adelaide whispered. "All of it." I transferred the files to their phones, watching their faces harden with each new piece of evidence. These weren't just Travis's victims. They were allies in waiting. David Yamamoto met me at a diner near his newspaper's office. His excitement barely contained as he slid into the booth across from me. He'd been investigating Travis's firm for 6 months, following paper trails that led nowhere, sources who wouldn't talk. "You said you have documentation." His notebook was already out, pen poised. I handed him a flash drive, financial records, emails, evidence of embezzlement from elderly clients, everything you need to verify your investigation. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the files on his laptop. This is incredible. How did you get this?" "I lived with it for 2 years. I just finally started paying attention. The Morrison account alone is enough for a front-page story. These patterns of theft, and you're willing to go on record. Wednesday morning, I said firmly, not before. I need 48 hours. He nodded, understanding the unspoken implications. Wednesday morning, first edition. This will be everywhere by lunch. I left the diner feeling lighter, as if each strategic move was removing weight I'd carried for years. The final stop was Emma's house, a 2-story colonial in Queens that smelled like coffee and safety. She opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug that lasted long enough for my composure to crack. "I saw the security footage," she said against my hair. "Henry sent it to me. I wanted to drive to that restaurant and drag you out of there. I needed them to see it, all of them to witness what he really is." He pulled back, studying my face. "You're different, stronger. I'm done being grateful for scraps of dignity. Done apologizing for existing in my own life." Emma had prepared the guest room with military precision. Fresh sheets, extra blankets, a phone charger by the nightstand. My grandmother's jewelry box sat on the dresser. Moved here weeks ago when I started planning. She'd even bought my favorite tea, the cheap brand Travis said tasted like dishwater. "How long?" she asked. "As long as it takes for him to realize I'm not coming back." "Good. Stay forever if you need to." Mia has been asking when Aunt Savvy is coming to visit. Her daughter, my 15-year-old niece, appeared in the doorway as if summoned. Mom says Uncle Travis is a walking trust fund with a personality disorder. "Mia," Emma scolded, but I laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in months. Your mom's not wrong. That night, I lay in Emma's guest bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a house where people actually lived instead of performed. No marble countertops requiring perfect silence. No judgment hovering in every corner. Just a home where I could exist without apology. My phone sat dark on the nightstand. Travis hadn't called yet. He probably hadn't even noticed I was gone. Assumed I was sulking in the guest room over my birthday disaster. But tomorrow morning, when federal investigators arrived at his office, when his client's wife started asking questions, when David Yamamoto began his final fact-checking, Travis would understand that his grateful wife had finally stopped being grateful. The silence of Emma's guest room shattered at 4:47 a.m., when my phone erupted with notifications. The screen lit up the dark room like lightning, buzzing against the nightstand with increasing urgency. 23 missed calls in the span of 12 minutes. I sat up, heart pounding, and reached for it with a disconnected calm of someone watching their carefully laid plans begin to detonate. The first voicemail was Travis at 4:35 a.m., his voice tight with confusion. "Savannah, where are you? There are federal agents at my office. They're taking computers. Call me immediately." The second, 3 minutes later, rage beginning to creep in. "What did you do? Whatever you think you're accomplishing here. Stop it now. We can discuss this like adults." By the fifth message, his voice had cracked into something I'd never heard before. "Fear. They're freezing the accounts. All of them. My clients are calling. The partners want an emergency meeting. Savannah, please. This is insane." He'd planned even where I would sit, ensuring my humiliation would be visible to everyone. I stared at Henry's photo of the reservation book for a long moment, tracing Travis's handwriting with my finger. He'd orchestrated every detail of my humiliation with the same precision he brought to his investment strategies. The calculation of it, the deliberate cruelty somehow freed something in me. There was no love to mourn, no partnership to grieve, just a performance I could finally stop giving. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that makes Manhattan feel smaller, more human. I dressed carefully in my red dress, the same one for my birthday, cleaned and pressed, and took the subway to Chateau Blanc. The doorman recognized me immediately, his eyes widening with something between sympathy and respect. "Madam Turner," he said, using my maiden name, though I hadn't told him about the filing. "Welcome back." The restaurant was quieter during breakfast service. Sunlight filtering through windows I hadn't noticed during that nightmare dinner. Henry appeared before I could ask for him, leading me to a small table by the window. The same section where I'd been humiliated but transformed by daylight into something almost peaceful. "Your coffee," he said, placing a cup in front of me without my ordering. "And please, this is on the house always." "Henry, I can't. You must understand something." He interrupted gently. "After what happened here, 3 of my servers threatened to quit if we continued serving Mr. Mitchell. The owner reviewed the footage himself and made a decision. Your former husband is permanently banned from this establishment. We do not serve people who treat others as he treated you." An elderly woman at the next table leaned over slightly. "Excuse me, dear. I was here that night, your birthday. I want you to know that everyone in this room was appalled by that man's behavior. The strength you showed paying that bill with dignity, while he stormed out like a child. It was remarkable." Her husband nodded. "We've been married 53 years. Never once has she had to question her worth in my eyes. That's what love looks like. Young lady, what you experienced wasn't love. It was possession. I sat in that restaurant for an hour drinking coffee that tasted like absolution, watching the city wake up outside windows that no longer felt like barriers but like possibilities. Elizabeth called at noon. They're ready to settle. Can you be at my office by 2? The conference room in Elizabeth's law firm felt different from Travis's world of marble and intimidation. This was practical luxury. Comfortable chairs, decent coffee windows that actually opened. Travis was already there when I arrived, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with his wrinkled suit or the shadows under his eyes. When he saw me, his jaw clenched, but his lawyers placed warning hands on his arms. "Let's make this quick," his lead attorney said, sliding papers across the table. "Given the circumstances and the criminal investigation, Mr. Mitchell is prepared to offer a generous settlement." Elizabeth laughed, actually laughed. "Generous? Your client committed financial fraud, adultery, and emotional abuse, all documented. The prenuptial agreement's moral turpitude clause is crystal clear. This is a negotiation. It's damage control. The terms were better than I'd imagined. The apartment free and clear. Half of all legitimate investments transferred immediately. Monthly alimony that tripled my teaching salary guaranteed for 10 years. Travis's hand shook as he signed, his signature deteriorating with each page until it was barely recognizable. "You destroyed me," he said quietly, not looking up from the papers. "I gave you everything." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You took everything and convinced me I should be grateful for the loss." His attorney nudged the last page forward. Travis signed it and pushed back from the table, standing to leave. At the door, he turned back. "You'll never be anybody without me." "I was always somebody," I replied. "You just needed me to forget it." Sunday dinner at Emma's house felt like breathing again. Her husband, Mike, had made his famous lasagna. The kitchen warmed with garlic and laughter. Their daughter, Mia, was getting ready for her first high school dance. Standing in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting a dress that made her look older than 15. "Aunt Savvy, do I look okay?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. I stood behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out my grandmother's emerald earrings, the ones that had witnessed my humiliation and survival. "These belong to your great-grandmother," I said. "Fasten them carefully. She wore them through the Depression, through loss, through everything life threw at her. She told me they were for brave girls who needed strength." "They're beautiful," Mia breathed, touching them gently. "She also told me something else." I continued. "A woman's worth doesn't come from a man who notices her, or the friends who approve of her, or the clothes she wears. It comes from the strength she shows when tested, from the kindness she maintains when the world is cruel, from the dignity she holds when others try to take it." Mia turned and hugged me tightly. "Mom told me what Uncle Travis did, how he treated you. And now you know what not to accept," I said. "Those earrings have seen strong women survive worse and come out better. Tonight, they'll see you dance and laugh, and be exactly who you are without apology." Monday morning came early, my alarm singing at 6 a.m. for the first time in a week. I dressed in my favorite teaching cardigan, the one with the coffee stain from a student's enthusiastic hug, and drove to Lincoln Elementary. feeling like I was returning from a very long journey. The parking lot was fuller than usual. As I walked toward the building, I noticed other teachers smiling more broadly, the security guard actually saluting as I passed. It wasn't until I reached my classroom that I understood why. A banner stretched across my doorway. "Welcome back, Miss Turner. We missed you," in rainbow letters colored outside the lines with third-grade enthusiasm. 28 small faces beamed at me from their desks, some bouncing with excitement. "Miss Turner," Sophia shouted, not bothering with inside voices. "You changed your name back. Mom says that means you're yourself again." "That's exactly what it means," I said, my throat tight with emotion. Michael raised his hand. "Were you sick?" "You never miss school." "I was a little sick," I admitted, "but I'm better now." "Good," he said. Seriously, because we had a substitute who didn't know the good morning song. And she said we couldn't have reading circle on the carpet, and she didn't laugh at my jokes. I looked around my classroom at construction paper butterflies and Miss Math Facts and tiny humans who saw me as Miss Turner who read stories with voices and let them eat goldfish crackers during spelling tests. Not as a charity case or an embarrassment or someone who should be grateful for attention, just as their teacher, who had been gone and was now back where she belonged. The morning sunlight caught the cheap plastic bracelet Sophia had made me weeks ago, still on my wrist where I'd placed it with the same care Travis had demanded for his Venetian coffee cups. This was wealth he'd never understand. Being loved for who you were, not what you represented. "All right, everyone," I said, settling into my desk chair that squeaked and had suspicious stains, but felt more like home than Italian leather ever had. "Who wants to tell me everything I missed?" 28 hands shot into the air, voices already bubbling over with stories about loose teeth and new pets and soccer games where they'd scored or hadn't but tried really hard. This was my life, my real life, the one Travis had tried to convince me wasn't enough. Turns out it was everything. If this story of calculated revenge kept you riveted to every twist and turn, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Savannah walked back into Chateau Blanc wearing that same red dress, holding her head high, while Henry told her Travis was permanently banned. What was your most satisfying moment? Share it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories of betrayal, redemption, and sweet justice. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.